Welcome back, everybody, to Two Guys and a Stack of Comics. My name is Reed. Along with me, as always, is Mike. Um,
Hey everybody.
Mike, I figured we have talked a lot about Batman on the channel, or at least I have done some videos talking about Batman. But me and you have always had kind of a balance as DC Comics fans, and you are a Flash guy. And I wanted to give you a chance today to just talk a little bit about the Flash to other Flash fans out there. Cool thing for you, you got to do a panel at San Diego Comic Con talking about the Flash. So I thought we'd kind of just dive into everything about the character today. Kind of where your love of the character started, walk us through a little bit of the panel, and kind of where you feel the comic is today. So I'll kick it to you to start, sir. The Flash, Barry Allen. When we say the Flash, we're very clear. We're talking Barry Allen. I know you got your love for Jay Garrick and Wally West, but when you say the Flash, I know you're talking Barry Allen. So I'll kick it to you, sir. How'd you end up becoming a Flash fan? What is it about the character overall that just connects with you, and where did that all start for you?
It all started at the a spinner rack at the Circle K back in the early 1970s when I was a kid. Like this is incredible. You just turn the rack and every row has a different comic in it. And the word The Flash must have just stood out to me. Um, and picking up an issue and that red suit. One of the earliest issues of the Flash I remember buying was this cover where there's a politician. He's at the podium giving a speech, and the Flash is out racing an assassin's bullet. He's got his hand out and he captures the bullet, and you know, um, I remember I got to see what happens in that story. Um, but I love DC and Superman and the Avengers and Daredevil and Iron Man. I loved all that stuff. And of course, Batman. Usually I would buy Detective Comics. I liked that as a kid over the regular Batman title. I'm not sure exactly why, probably the art. Um, but anyway, I gravitated towards the Flash. I've been collecting Flash ever since then and just really became interested in comic book history because of the Flash, coming across a stack of old comic books at an antique show. And looking through those comics, I pulled out one that also said the Flash, but he looked really, really different. Of course, it was Jay Garrick. It was Flash number 51, I think, from 1943. And so that started my interest in comic book history. Like, oh, this character goes way back then, and he actually looked different. And then, of course, studying up on comics and understanding how we got Barry Allen from Jay Garrick in the famous comic book Showcase number 4, where he was totally retconned, we would call it now, and completely remade. And that fascinated me. And then later on in life, as I studied comic book history, I understood the impact of that event, the retconning of that character at that time when comic books were in serious decline and all the companies were closing up shop, even DC and Marvel, what was Atlas Comic, what would become Marvel, they were all getting ready to fold up pretty much. And they had to do something to save their sales. And them retconning the Flash and turning him into this, sleek one piece kind of suit, no cape. And the speedster, who was a police scientist, a regular guy, but, also a police scientist and giving him kind of a sci-fi kind of accident to give him his superpowers, the lightning and the chemicals, all that kind of science fiction imbued into a hero, and making that the new generation of the Flash sparked everything that came after, and realizing the impact that the character that I love the most the impact that it had on the rest of the industry, which was in decline, it sparked a whole interest in comics. Kids loved the Flash. Um, they brought back the Green Lantern from the Golden Age after the Flash worked. They brought back the Justice Society. They called it the Justice League in the 60s, in Brave and the Bold 29. And that became a big hit. And all these hits after hits after hits with these retcons of superheroes, which at the time there weren't that many superheroes being printed. Kids had lost touch with superheroes. We had moved on. And but that retconning of that one superhero started the whole domino effect, which ended up becoming the Silver Age. And Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko end up at Marvel, and the publisher at Marvel said, "Hey, superheroes are selling again. We got to have some superheroes," because Marvel was publishing westerns and mystery comics and science fiction. They weren't doing superheroes anymore. Marvel said, "We got to do superheroes," and then Marvel started doing superheroes. But that whole thing started with the Flash in 1956, and DC deciding, "I think it's time. We got to try superheroes again." So I was talking with Bill over at Nelco Comics last year about this, and he's more of a EC, Marvel, and funny book guy, but he has his love for DC characters too. And he said that would make a great idea for a panel at Comic-Con. And I submitted my idea, and lo and behold, they said, yes, come down to Comic-Con and talk about your favorite comic book character. It was like, blown away. Is this really happening? I think I got the okay back in March when they accepted my panel idea. Now I had to put together a panel of experts and a slideshow and present this material. And I was very fortunate to get some really good people on my panel. Of course, Bill Field, my friend, was on it. Alex Grand from Comic Book Historians was on it. Kevin Garcia from Marvel Comics was on it. Uh, um, uh, Phil Nelson from Nelco Comics was on it. And of course, Bob Burden, the guy that created Mystery Men and Flaming Carrot, they were all on my panel. And, I handed out this little paper with my little slide notes on it. I got to hand one of these to Bob Burden and Kevin Garcia. They're like, this is great. We're going to go. We went in and did the panel. It was about 50 minutes long. We had a great discussion on how the industry got to where it was, and how huge of an impact that this retcon of this character had on, all of pop culture. Can you imagine where we'd be today if comic books had just kind of fizzled out and it was just a 10 or 15-year fad from the 40s, superheroes, whoopee, and you look back on it like polka dots or, you know, um, the Studebaker or something, and it was just something, a footnote in history, what comic books were. But instead, the whole industry shifted. Superheroes became wildly popular. We had the Batman TV show, and pretty soon we had movies in the 70s. In the 80s, we had a few more, and then the explosion of the Marvel Universe. But none of that would have happened if somebody didn't revamp the superhero for the modern age. None of that would have happened. And it was very impactful. And he was my favorite character. So I was like, hey, Flash came to the rescue. He saved the day and saved the whole comic book industry. And
Much like his role in what Crisis, right? Crisis on Infinite Earths, where he's kind of the one
yeah,
who
he
makes the
comes in.
sacrifice that saves the entire DC universe.
Yeah,
Um,
saves the day again.
I,
So, wow.
no, it's really cool that you got to do that. For you, I think we can talk a little bit about where the Flash is now, and I think what we've always liked to do is kind of dive into the full kind of tapestry of where the character is. You had the TV show in the early '90s, the John Wesley Shipp one. We had the Grant Gustin one that ran for a while. We had a really ill-fated movie. Um, I don't think we've ever really talked. What is your perspective on how the Flash has been portrayed in media, from the '90s show to the Gustin show and the movie? Like, as a hardcore fan of it, how have you felt about how he's been presented? Even stuff like the Justice League cartoon, which I know is more Wally West, but how have you felt about his kind of multimedia presentation as a character?
Well, it was amazing to catch a glimpse as a child of the Flash here and there in the early Super Friends shows. And you know, you always wanted more, but you knew he was like a tier character, right? Um, you know, when the Batman movie came out, we were all excited, like, you know, maybe, you know, Superman had his movie, then Batman had his movie. Then what's next? It's got to be either Wonder Woman or The Flash. Wonder Woman had her TV show. So we were thinking, you know, The Flash would be next. And they did. They went and did The Flash on television, which was incredible. 1989, 1990 is when it aired. I always thought the Flash was too burly in the TV show, the first show,
Hmm.
because the Flash is, you know, Carmine Infantino drew him kind of lean and thin, and you know, he's a runner and he's, you know, speedy. He's not Superman or Batman, which is more of a husky kind of guy.
Hmm.
So I always thought he was a little burly, but I love the show and the costume. They made him ripped and everything, and it was impressive. But I was thought that's not really, you know, the Flash, you know, from the comics. But it was great fun, and if you've never seen that show, it's worth a watch. You got to put your 1990s glasses on to watch it, but you know what I mean. But it's a great show to watch.
Yeah.
It's really fun. Um, the 2013 Flash show with Grant Gustin was more accurate to Barry Allen, I felt. And I really love that show. My son grew up watching that show on Tuesday nights is when it used to air, I think. And you know, every Tuesday night we'd watch that show. Um, it did it did kind of fade a little bit at the end. Things got a little muddled, but the first three seasons were captivating, and the fourth and the fifth seasons we were kind of like, you know, we're just rolling with it. But still, as a Flash fan, can I say how great it was to see Barry Allen on TV for what was it, 9 years?
Yeah, I think 9 seasons. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it was incredible. And I never got tired of seeing him get in that suit and run around in Central City. I never got tired of that. There were some really good, iconic comic book moments there that they translated to live action TV that I really appreciated. So I always felt that Grant Gustin's portrayal was much closer to Barry Allen than John Wesley Ships. Although I will say this, if I had to, you know, do a hybrid thing, the Barry Allen that John Wesley Ship portrayed, his police scientist character that he played on the original TV show was much closer to Barry Allen's day job in the comics. What Grant Gustin did in the 2000s TV show was much more like theoretical physics and stuff like that, which is not really what Barry Allen did. So those are the two. Like, if you want to get nerdy about Flash stuff, yeah, we'll get nerdy about it.
It's
But
kind of a balance of the two in terms of the
yeah,
portrayals for sure.
yeah, yeah.
Um, movies, it's interesting. There's been so many false starts with Flash movies as far as, I mean, even, I'm in my 30s and I remember 9 or 10 times saying there's a Flash movie. Oh, they're going to do this, they're going to do this. And then it didn't come through. We finally got one. Me and you did a video where we pretty much eviscerated that one, but with a little bit of time in it. What is your perspective on the Flash movie we got? Like overall, how do you as a that your favorite character? What's your kind of final verdict on that movie a few years removed?
Um, I haven't seen it a second or third time. I would like to watch it again. I do feel like because it bombed so hard that we'll never get another Flash movie, and that makes me sad. The movie itself, I mean, You can pick apart any movie, but it had trouble with its storyline. They had a layup of a storyline to go and get, but they didn't get it. Instead, they gave us what they did. It was cool to see Batman in that movie. I really liked it. And Supergirl, who was standing in for Superman in that story. I thought they did a good job. Those performances were really good. And I feel that the special effects were kind of cool, but the storyline and the character of Barry Allen was just somebody who really wasn't Barry Allen. He wasn't an 18-year-old college kid. You know, it just wasn't right. And they gave us two versions of him in the same movie. It would have been one thing if it was just the one, but then the Freaky Friday, the Double Trouble Twinsy Ultra World, alternate universe versions. I really feel like they should have just stuck to one Flash. Is it not cool enough that you have Flash Batman and a Superman character in the same movie? But you have to have two Flashes. I don't
No,
know.
especially because they
It's
were adapting Flashpoint, which only has one Barry. It was just a very out of left field decision that seemed to backfire. I think that's where we can kind of pivot to close out. What's interesting is, you bring up the history of the Flash and how important he is in things. Even modern DC Comics, Flashpoint is probably the largest event that DC had, I would say, the last 2 decades, and that the New 52 launch and all of that. Story that heavily featured Barry. I know you love the Flashpoint Paradox, the animated film, but with about 15 years removed of it, how do you feel about the Flashpoint story, the kind of retcon that Thawne was responsible for killing Barry's mom? Like, how do you feel about how they've handled the character recently in terms of stories like that?
I liked it. I really liked it. It gave us Flash fans a different perspective and a new motivation. Anytime as a Flash fan, you're gonna gin up excitement about the Flash because he's always in that third or fourth position. Is always great. And to see him, play a pivotal role in comic books once again just shows you the importance of the character and the power of that character and what he can bring to storytelling. So I didn't mind. I wasn't upset that they changed his origin around or anything like that. It was a really good story. And as long as it's written really good, you can't go wrong. And it was drawn beautifully, by the way. So, I was down for it. Same thing with the movie. If they gave me a different Barry and the story was good, and you had a flashy speedster character in there, I'm okay with it. Same thing in 1956. You give me a speedy character, you put on a new veneer and make it work. You can't go wrong with a character that can run at the speed of light. You just can't go wrong. It's going to have good stories.
It's weird in that, despite his importance, it's weird that he's kind of on the bench now as a character, and that we get Wally West.
Hey,
I guess I'll bridge into that. How do you feel about the prominence of Wally and that? So it's interesting. The one thing I'll kind of add here. As a Batman fan, I love Dick Grayson. Great character. There's one year though that I didn't buy Batman comics in the last 20 something years, and it was when they killed Bruce Wayne and they made Dick Grayson Batman. I just refused to buy. And again, nothing against Dick Grayson. I buy his comic on his own. When they
yeah.
made Dick Batman, I was done. For you as a fan of Barry, where Wally has had a really long runway of being the Flash, what is your perspective as a Barry Allen fan on Wally, on Jay, on like all the Flash family? How do you feel about those characters?
I'll always love Jay. And when they killed Barry off in the 80s, and then in 87, they started with Wally's own comic book. I didn't buy it. I was like, The Flash is dead. I mean, I know Wally's going to pick up the mantle, but I have gone back and collected those issues and read them. And, they did a great job on it. They built a new character. Like you mentioned, Flash is sidelined right now. I mean, he's been sidelined before. He always comes back. And when he comes back with a bang. So I am looking forward to the next reinvention of the Barry Allen Flash, and I'm sure it'll be significant when it does come back. I'm enjoying Absolute Flash right now,
Hmm.
and I think that Wally's a great character. I always liked Wally West, but he did have to fill big shoes in the '80s and bring the Flash back. Um, I don't always like some of the ways he's been portrayed in other media, like in the cartoons and the animated stuff. They make him kind of the jokester, like the Spider-Man of the DC universe, and I guess they figured they needed that in there. But Barry's always the Flash should always be a serious guy, and I think in the comics they portrayed that more accurately. That Wally was, serious, and he had his family and all these other things that have come to pass in his life and his adventures. I appreciate it. So, but I am looking for the return of Barry. I want him
Yeah,
to come
no,
back in a big way.
hopefully we'll get that soon. I mean, at least we have him narrating the whole new history of the DC universe right now, and then making him the kind of
Huh?
biographer of DC, which is pretty cool. But
That is pretty
hopefully we
cool,
will
right?
see hopefully we will see more from the fastest man alive soon. Let us know though, folks, down below, if you're a Flash fan, if you're like Mike, a lifelong Flash fan, we'd be really interested in hearing what's your experience with the Flash. Do you like Barry? Do you like Jay? Do you like Wally? If you're not a Flash fan, what is it about the character that hasn't really resonated with you? And did you know about his historical place in comics? It's always interesting to see your thoughts down below.
And
Uh,
go on, we'll put the link below. Go on and check my panel. It's out on the Comic Book Historians YouTube. You can see my panel on the Flash that I did last week in San Diego.
Absolutely. We'll make sure to link that. As always, folks, thank you guys so much for watching. God bless you all. You have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everybody.